J.T. Crowley is Talking Books. On this show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world. They'll give you their take on the writing process and how to create the secret sauce of page-turning deliciousness. Let's get into that magical mixture of the art and science of creativity. Here's J.T. Crowley, author of The Smart Kids, and your podcast host.
Hello, I'm J.T. Crowley, and I have to say I'm very excited about the prospect of interviewing Denise Bachrodt about herself and her book, Love Conquers All, subtitled Spiritual Messages of Hope for Our Despairing World. Denise is from Aspen in Colorado in the United States of America, and of course, this small town nestled in the Rocky Mountains is synonymous with skiing and outdoor pursuits. More the winter skiing, because that's what they're more famous for. And of course, it's the rich and the famous who have patronized that area that really brings Aspen to the world's attention. But as I said in my written introduction, for Denise, it's simply home. Denise has worked in the corporate world, in particular for IBM, a job she loved. And like most of us, life for Denise has seen its fair share of ups and downs. And the book, Love Conquers All, was written when she was going through a traumatic and challenging time. And divorce is never easy for any of us. But for me, I worked out that her faith, and especially meditation, is at the heart and soul of Denise's life today. Something that was probably spawned from her Polish roots. For as we know, Polish society is steeped in Christianity. So let's get on with the show, and for me to stop waffling any further. And let's go and invite Denise to come on the show and talk to us all about herself and her wonderful book, Love Conquers All. Denise, come and join me.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here today. I understand it's the height of tourist season in the UK, and it's the same here in Aspen. It used to be the best kept secret, summer in the Rockies, but now everyone's discovered it. And our summer business outdoes our winter skiing business. So it's really a beautiful time of year to be here.
Oh, it's great. And you look fabulous, and that wonderful fireplace behind you is amazing. I bet that's a warm place in into the winter time when it's really cold there. In the winter time, you're right, John. It's in the center of 4 rooms: my living room, dining room, kitchen, foyer, and it just warms everything up. It's when you come to my home, you want to kick off your shoes and just sit down in front of the fireplace and relax. Now that sounds my kind of place.
Yes.
And when I'm next in America, you're on my list.
Please come visit. Yes.
To stay there, and along with a few other authors who are already booking me in to stay in their places as well.
That's right.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So Denise, my understanding is that you wrote this book during a difficult time in your life. Did you feel compelled to write this book? Was it a labor of love? And while you were writing it, did you get any comfort from the spiritual messages yourself? For this is a book of spiritual messages, isn't it?
John, those are some good questions. I never thought I'd write a book in my lifetime. I had been writing these spiritual messages, I'd say 15 years before I decided to publish the book. And what helped me, the incentive, was COVID lockdowns. I had 4 or 5 hours a day to be on the computer to go through all of these messages. I had 14 spiral notebooks full of messages, and to categorize them and to share them with the world. It's just my belief that this reset needed to happen to all of us. If people are somewhat like me, you get caught up in the rat race and you're just running from one to-do task to the next. And our lockdowns were definitely a timeout, a chance to reflect and see what values and priorities were important to us and which ones weren't. And I definitely had a chance to reflect And that was the impetus to get the book and get it published, get it out there. And I certainly had the time for it. So while some people could have been bored, I was busy through the entire lockdown. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Now the book, Denise, has, it's got 6 chapters in it. And
Yes.
within those chapters are a collection of spiritual messages. Some chapters are longer than others. And for me, the messages are loosely themed around the title of that chapter. How did you group these messages into the 6 strong chapters?
Good question, John. When I first decided to write the book, I just thought, no problem. I'll start with 2003 when I was receiving the messages, and I'll end it with 2018. Well, I happened to take an online course on writing a book through Hay House Publishing, and they said, no, you never do that. You have to break it up into themes for each chapter. So then I thought, oh goodness, this is going to take longer than I imagined. So I went through all of my spiral notebooks, and each chapter will have a message that matches that theme from 2003 to 2018. But I'm still, thank God, receiving these messages. And so I have updated messages on my daily podcast, which are only 2 minutes. It works out fine.
So when we look at the chapters, you've got your first chapter is Hope for a Despairing World. Your second chapter is Love of All Mankind. The third is Our Future. The fourth is Remaining in the Present Moment. And the fifth is How God Speaks to Us. Do not worry or fret. And the sixth is God speaks to us always and in all ways. So they're quite interesting themes. But what I want to know, Denise, is where do these messages come from? Are they messages formulated in your own mind from what you've seen, experienced in life? Or are these messages that you consider to have been sent, given to you through divine ways? Meditation, prayer, for example? And do you, as an individual person, strongly believe that getting God's message out is important? So important, you wrote the book.
Thank you, John. These messages are definitely divinely inspired. I do not think in these realms. I do pray, I do meditate, I practice centering prayer, which is a form of meditation that Father Thomas Keating brought back to us. He was a Cistercian monk. He passed away about 3 years ago. But he and Father William Menninger, who just passed away, and Father Basil Pennington, who also passed away, got together and said, a lot of these young people are traveling to India to practice that form of meditation. But deep in our Christian religion, we have meditation. It was removed from the lay people during the big Inquisition, 11th, 12th century. And at that point, the church leaders said, the only people that can practice the so-called mind prayer, contemplative prayer, were the monks and nuns. And the lay people just had to look at the beautiful pictures painted in the churches and listen to the priest or pastor or whatever. So in the 60s, the young people decided they wanted to come to our St. Benedict's Monastery in Snowmass, Colorado, and say, why don't you teach us how you meditate? It's part of our Christian religion. And these monks got together and brought centering prayer to us. So people are practicing the centering prayer meditation around the world. And instead of an or a breath or a sound or a visual, it's a sacred word, one syllable. Mine happens to be God. You just close your eyes, set your timer for 20 minutes, and you're just present to God, allowing him to speak to you. If you should do what I do at times and think of my to-do list, ever so gently in your mind, return to your sacred word, which is mind, God, and it brings you right back into that focus. So I've been practicing that type of meditation for about 30 years. And before I write any message today or do any podcast, I'll do my meditation first, which just silences me. And then I'm open to hear whatever Mary, Jesus's mother, is telling me, or Jesus. And Thomas Keating said that's one of the fruits of the Spirit. When you do meditate or when you pray like that, you can hear God's voice. So that's how it got started. Yes. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think I shared a story with you, John.
Please
One
do.
day I had a really difficult day at IBM, and I was driving home to Boulder, and I decided to stop by this little chapel. And I went inside, walked all the way to the front. No one was in church. And I saw this beautiful statue of the Blessed Mother. So I sat there in my self-pity pattern and said, "Oh, you are so lucky. You never had to sell computers. You don't know how difficult that is." And all of a sudden, I heard her voice, and she was definitely a Jewish mother. And she said, "You think I had it easy?" And I was shocked to hear her voice. And she said, "I was pregnant before I was married. And then I had to watch them kill my son on the cross. And then I felt so guilty and so humbled. And I said, I'm so sorry." And I listened more to what she had to tell me. And then as I walked out of that little chapel, I thought, what just happened to me? Was that real? And when I opened my car door to get into my car to drive home, it was filled with the scent of roses. And then I knew definitely that was Our Lady speaking to me. And I was honored. So I just would go there and listen to her messages from time to time. And then after that, it was a few years later, I decided to write them down when I was on retreat. So I think the way our world is today, John, we need to hear the good part. We need to hear the good side of what God has planned for our world, our planet, for all of us. And it's definitely good conquering evil right now. We're in the middle of a spiritual war, but good will conquer evil, and much better days are coming.
I'm going to come to that in your book here.
Okay.
So Denise, let's get to the hub of this book. But I want to start with the preface, because I thought, wow, this is a powerful opening. So the preface, your opening gamut. This book was meant to give hope to a world of despairing people due to government corruption, sexual abuse, human trafficking. I asked God, what do you make of all this? He told me it all needed to rise to the surface so that we could become aware of what is actually happening in our world today, that he would no longer tolerate such behavior. And it is paving the way for peace on earth. This is a very strong preface. Why did you put it in?
That's the essence of the book, John. I was on a retreat at the Snowmass Monastery in December of 2017. We didn't have much snow then. I was walking along a dirt road, and I just opened up to God and said, okay, what's going on, God? With government corruption, sexual abuse, human trafficking, people are despairing. What should we make of this? And that's when I heard him say, Denise, all of this needed to rise to the surface so that we could become aware of what's actually happening in the world. I had no idea how corrupt and evil our world was. He said, and once you realize that, you will no longer tolerate this behavior, and it will pave the way for peace on earth. So I had to bring that out. I had to let people know there's hope. So now when I turn on the news, and I try not to be inundated by it, I watch a little bit to be informed. I just quickly in my mind jump to, okay, it's getting it out, but it's paving the way for peace on earth, because people aren't going to